Congresswoman, the buzzword we hear these days about the Democratic Party is disarray, that it's in disarray. And looking at Washington, you know, we see, I believe, some evidence of that. Moderates fighting with centrists, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, exerting huge power over the president's big spending plans, and the president's approval ratings are really sinking down in the low 40s. So what's going on? Is this disarray?
Well, nothing could be further from the truth, Michael. Look at how far we've come since President Biden was inaugurated. We've made dramatic progress in getting people vaccinated against this COVID-19 pandemic. We have made sure that we got trillions of dollars through the American Rescue Plan into the pockets of individuals and families who desperately needed that assistance, kept businesses afloat, made sure that employees didn't lose their jobs, made sure that people didn't lose their homes. And that American Rescue Plan, which was one of the most significant funding packages in American history, is continuing to deliver. In particular, with child tax credits that are refunded, so that now we've been able to cut child poverty in half. And we're looking in the legislation we're working on through the Build Back Better Act to make that permanent and do so much more. So we'll get there. These artificial deadlines are just that.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to paint a entirely bleak picture. I think there have been some accomplishments, especially perhaps with fighting COVID-19 and the vaccination program. But let's look at some particulars. The rate of inflation, we just learned the other day, for the past year is 5.4%. 5.5% is what, you know, your spending power is less than it was a year ago. What's going to be done about that?
Well, the main thing that needs to be done is that the unvaccinated need to go out and get a vaccine. It has really been much more challenging to get our economy back up and running as a result of people who, unfortunately, are listening to misinformation and disinformation on websites and on right-wing media, and making sure that everyone is vaccinated and can help us restore the economy to a fully functioning one. That's a critical element to this. And then passing the Build Back Better Act, which will make sure that we can have the wealthiest, most fortunate Americans and the 50 biggest corporations that paid zero taxes for years are paying their fair share. And then we can make the kinds of investments that are going to help people get back on their feet, like childcare, like making sure that we can invest in people having a roof over their heads, creating more jobs by passing the infrastructure bill. Those are critical elements, and we're going to get that done, unfortunately, without a single Republican helping us. And President Biden and Democrats in Congress are working hard to make sure that we can do that.
Yeah, we understand. Well, the president has said over and over that people who make more than $400,000 are going to be taxed at a higher rate. He wants to raise the corporate income tax to 28%. Of course, a lot of those companies don't pay basically any taxes at all, but there's huge pushback right now from Republicans and from the wealthy and the people who work for them. How's this going to be resolved?
Well, of course, there's huge pushback from the 50 biggest corporations and the wealthiest 1%, who are all aided and abetted by Republicans in Congress because they got a really good deal. They're paying nothing, while middle class and working class Americans are struggling just to be able to keep the roofs over their heads, to be able to make sure that they can get a job that pays them a decent wage. So we're trying to make sure through President Biden's Build Back Better plan that we rebalance the scales here, that we pass transformative legislation that will help make sure that we have quality, affordable childcare so people don't have to choose between going to work and taking care of their children, so that we can make sure we make the child tax credit permanent, that's now refunded, and people are getting a monthly check. That will continue to help us cut child poverty in half, making sure that we invest through passing the infrastructure bill, particularly in Florida, where we have more than 400 bridges and 3,500 miles of highway that are in poor condition. Florida will see $13 billion for our highways and $275 million from this bill to fix our bridges. That's real money that'll create real jobs, and Republicans are just standing on the sidelines doing nothing, taking care of their wealthy supporters, and we're going to put an end to that.
Yeah. Congresswoman, Tell me your view about what is going to happen to this huge social spending bill. It never got a catchy title like some bills
Build
do,
Back
but
Better Act. It has a catchy title. It would just be great if people use it.
okay, that's good enough. But it's turned it out at $3.5 trillion. Senator Manchin, among others, I guess Senator Sinema said, no, that's way too much. Let's make it about $2 trillion. But the things it would do are really things this country needs: address climate change, expand the internet, provide paid leave, home care for seniors, expand health benefits to dental and vision. All of those things are good, but is that bill going to be passed, and in what form?
I am confident that we will pass the Build Back Better Act, and that legislation will, as you just listed, will, hopefully, because it's not about the top line number. What it's about is, what are we going to do to transform the lives of millions of Americans and help people who aren't in the middle class reach it, and make sure that people who are in the middle class can stay there. And that includes making sure that we invest in childcare that reduces the costs for families, because right now so many people are having to have a parent stay home, because if they don't make enough to cover the childcare bill, then it becomes not worth it to go out to work. Making sure that we can have universal pre-K so that we can have quality education at the earliest stages of life to set children on the pathway to success. Making sure that we invest in climate resiliency. We are living climate change and its impact in Florida right now. It's not in the future. And we're going to pull together to build those programs into the legislation that will ultimately pass and will send to President Biden's desk.
Right. And at what point is it going to be about 2 trillion, 2.2 trillion? Do you have a figure that you can even estimate?
That's, again, what's important is what's in the bill. And we're working on that right now. And unfortunately, Michael, the media has really hyped up the deadline. There isn't a deadline, a hard and fast time that we have to get this bill passed. Of course, except that the National Highway Safety legislation runs out on October 31st. So we're going to either have to extend that a little bit longer so that we can finish in our negotiations. Yeah. But at the end of this, we're going to pass the most robust legislation to help transform people's lives that we've seen since the Great Society in the 1960s. And we're going to pass the largest infrastructure package we've seen in history, so that we can make sure that we get this economy humming again, and we can make sure that we can get things back on track. Yeah. That will, again, all be without the help of Republicans, because they've made it very clear that they want to see President Biden fail. And they don't really care about making sure that we get people's lives back on track.
Yeah, Representative Wasserman Schultz, not many days ago, the House voted and passed a bill that cut $1 billion out of a funding for the Iron Dome system in Israel. It came back the next day, a standalone bill, and it passed. But it just seems astounding, frankly, to me and to, I think, any other supporter of Israel, that the House of Representatives could pass a bill that cut out a defense system that has saved countless lives. What went on there?
Michael, that's a gross mischaracterization of what happened. We passed the Iron Dome legislation to provide an additional $1 billion to replenish the Iron Dome system that helps Israel defend herself. In standalone legislation, 420-9. It wasn't cut out of anything. It was just that we passed it as separate legislation as opposed to part of the larger continuing resolution package. So I just want to make sure that we characterize it accurately. And the overwhelming majority of the House of Representatives supported that legislation. 9 people voted against it, and I'm confident that the Senate is going to take that up and send it to President Biden. That it's nothing more than the logistics of how we passed it. And it was very clear that there was overwhelming support for it, as there should be.
Okay, W. Wasserman Schultz, always good to speak with you. Wish you well in Washington. Kind of a chaotic place these days, it would seem. I know you were a stable force up there. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.